Hello everyone, welcome to the McMaster Health Forum here at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario. This is our latest Queen Elizabeth Scholarship webinar and presentation by our returning scholars who went abroad visiting our partners as part of the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Program. There's an agenda for our presentations today. There are 3 scholars presenting during this session. I will first give you a little bit of information about our scholarship program and then turn it over to each of our scholars. The McMaster Health Forum is the leading hub for improving health outcomes through collective problem solving. We harness information, convene stakeholders, prepare action-oriented leaders, and act as an agent of change by empowering stakeholders. The Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Program is run by a partnership between the Rita Hall Foundation, Community Foundations of Canada, Universities Canada, and the individual Canadian universities. The purpose of the program is to activate a dynamic community of young global leaders across the Commonwealth to create lasting impacts both at home and abroad through cross-cultural exchanges encompassing international education, discovery and inquiry, and professional experiences. The version of the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Program here at the McMaster Health Forum is called Strengthening Health Systems. Our scholars will contribute to strengthening health systems and become part of our large and growing network of health system leaders. Today's presentation is actually the last presentation by scholars from this original QES program here at the Forum. I say that because the Forum is one of 20 Canadian institutions to be awarded a new or second Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Program that will run till 2021. This new program here at the Forum is called Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Program in Strengthening Health and Social Systems, and from the name you can see that there's a slight difference in this program as opposed to the original program. The location of the internships has expanded. Before we could only send scholars to Commonwealth countries. Now we can send scholars to Commonwealth plus low and middle income countries. Because of this, our partners have expanded. We now have partners in Colombia and Lebanon, and the focus of our internships has expanded to include social systems. Because of this last element, we've also expanded the eligibility criteria, and therefore students who are in the Arts and Sciences program in the undergraduate system here at McMaster are also eligible for the scholarship. But in the big picture, we are reducing the number of overall scholars across the course of the scholarship program due to funding and other such issues. So, with that said, here from our original QES program is the initial cohort. They primarily went away in 2016 or visited us in the same year. Our second cohort was much larger, with a little bit of a glitch on the slide there, but we had a large number of students who went abroad in 2017 or visited us in that year. And our third and final cohort, of which the scholars presenting today are a part, primarily visited us or went away in 2018. I'm pleased now to present to you our scholar presenter, that is Ananya, who was at the time of her internship a Bachelor of Health Sciences student here at McMaster University. At the time of the webinar recording, she is still such a student. Her interests are in the intersectionality present between clinical medicine, economics, and public policy in delivering and strengthening health. And through her internship, Ananya hoped to gain an appreciation for the intricate network of people, resources, and structures involved in sustaining a health system which is responsive to the health needs and demands of the Caribbean region. Ladies and gentlemen, please let me introduce you to Ananya.
Thank you, James. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. So I'm just going to talk about my time at CARPHA, taking in all the Caribbean sun, which is beautiful. James already said a little bit about me, but I am a public and global health enthusiast. I'm interested in the intersectionality between clinical medicine, economics, and public policy because I think medicine is being run more and more as a business, and it's important to take those factors into consideration. I'm also a coffee and food enthusiast. I love Starbucks, and I'm also an avid traveler. So you can kind of see why programs such as QES drew me in because it offered me an intersection between all of my interests. So just a quick overview of what I'll be talking about, a little bit about CARPHA itself, which is the Caribbean Public Health Agency, the 3 projects I had the opportunity to work on, my time exploring Trinidad and Tobago, and all the lovely people I had a chance to meet during this process. So what exactly is CARPHA? It's a single regional public health agency. So before CARPHA operated there was almost 5 to 6 agencies that were operating on its own. So there was like a lab agency, there was another one for communications, and so on. So CARPHA was actually only formed about 5 years ago, and they put all of these things together under the bigger umbrella of CARPHA. It consists of 26 member states in the Caribbean region. They have 3 offices, so I particularly worked in the Trinidad and Tobago office, but they also have one in St. Lucia and Jamaica. Their goal is to promote the health and well-being of the Caribbean people. The region takes a collective response to strengthening and reorienting the Caribbean health system because they're very similar in terms of the demands that the healthcare system faces, but also the geographical location puts them also at similar risks with respect to hurricanes or any other kind of natural calamities. They're building capacity within the healthcare system to respond and address the changing nature of public health changes. And they are intergovernmental, so they have a lot of support from governments, so the 26 governments that they work with, but also a lot of the development partners that they work with, such as the Public Health Agency of Canada, the European Union, CDC, and so on. While I was there, I was specifically working with the Resource Mobilization and Partnerships team under the supervision of Cheryl Sobers. And while I was there, first I was only given 2 tasks. First one was to work on the work plan. The second one was a terms of reference document. And the very last one was to work on a conference position paper to submit to the heads of state. But that one came a lot later during my internship. It was just an added on project, which was also very interesting because I really enjoyed working on that project. The first one was to create a work plan template. So the way CARPHA operates is that it has almost 6 other networks that it's working with. So there's a lab network called CARPHA, there's a communications network that's called RHCN. They also have a network that deals with projects associated with vector-borne diseases called CareVecNet. So they have all of these little networks that they operate with, and they wanted to create work plans, annual work plans for all of these networks because they wanted to increase the harmonization and alignment of the goals that CARPHA have with the goals of the networks themselves so that they're both working together to achieve the goal versus CARPHA saying something and then the networks not being able to follow through with it. The other one was to also create more effective use of resources through increased collaboration because a lot of these networks do have an intertwined working nature and therefore some of the projects they work on are very similar. So we don't want to waste resources on the similar projects. So if every single network was aware of what the other networks are doing, then there would be less wastage of resources, the very limited resources that we have to work with. And then a tangible record of work as well, because a lot of the funding does come from outside sources. And so it's always good to show the accomplishments that CARPHA has been able to do over the next couple of years and so on and so forth. So we had a lot of road bumps with this one. We weren't able to we ended up creating a work plan template. We weren't able to create an actual work plan for a majority of these networks because there was some restructuring that was happening while I was there. But we did create a work plan template that now CARPHA can use to produce all of their work plans for the rest of the years to come. But also we did fortunately make one for the RHCN, so the communication network has one as a work plan template for them. And the work plan template can be modified by other subgroups within these networks as well. So I've spread the work plan template to quite a few individuals who wanted to work on it that way as well. The second project was to work on a terms of reference document. So like I mentioned before, CARPHA receives a lot of funding from outside sources, and to allow for greater communication and greater structure and clarity as to the roles that CARPHA will take on, the roles that our partners will take on, what are the responsibilities that each of these members have. I helped draft a terms of reference document outlining a partnership coordination mechanism. So there's a lot of coordination mechanisms out there, but they all ended up saying that, well, these are all great, but they also have so many faults, and then it's up to you to tailor it to the organization that you're working with. So the way we went about structuring it was we had a committee of there will be a standing committee of almost 10 members. One would be CARPHA, who never leaves. CARPHA is always there. And then the other 9 would be the other development partners, so the EU, PHAC, CDC, whoever else. And then there would be greater conversation, almost like a board of directors almost is the idea. And it's to have greater transparency between the partners and CARPHA, greater use of the resources so that, EU isn't funding a project and PHAC isn't funding a project that both go to the same thing. There's just more greater transparency. Therefore, there's also a limited duplication and fragmentation of efforts. This one was a really cool project because I ended up having to send these emails out to like the delegations for the EU and stuff like that. And I thought, I also had to call them being like, hey, did you get the document I sent you? So I thought an assistant would pick up, but multiple times I was talking to the actual representative. So I was on the phone with the EU, the ambassador for the EU to the Caribbean region, which was kind of cool because I honestly thought the assistant would pick up, and that happened multiple times. And I was like, okay, wow, this is amazing that a 21-year-old is now talking to someone who's so high up and being able to do all these cool things. So that was a terms of reference document. And the very last one that I had a chance to work on is the conference position paper. So the Caribbean region is trying to create a single market economy. The best way to explain it is that it's trying to become, or trying to emulate something similar to the EU in that there's greater trade between the countries and there's a greater unity between the Caribbean region, Caribbean countries. So to do that, so far it's been already implemented, but the focus is majorly based on economics and trade. The health perspective was lacking within the CSME, so one of the tasks that I was supposed to do was try to bring the health perspective and try to show the CSME why health should be on their agenda when talking about creating a strong CSME, because if you have workers within the same region coming in and out, well, who's going to take care of their health care? How are we going to make sure that someone in Jamaica is now in Trinidad for, let's say, 2-3 months to work on a project? How are we going to make sure that this person has access to health care? So those kind of things. Standardized food and nutrition labeling, because if one country has lenient laws against, labeling and one does not, then, corporations are more likely to go to the lenient one and ignore a country that has more strict laws. So making sure there's greater standardization with respect to food and nutrition and medical technologies across every single country in the Caribbean, within the CSME. And this was really cool because I was coming in from a health perspective. All the members of the team were coming in from a health perspective, but we actually had to present it from an economic and trade perspective. So we had to tell them why doing all of this is important for the economic benefit of the Caribbean region. So I learned cool words like market failure or information asymmetry and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool because we still wanted to make sure that the health perspective was there, but it was not as strong compared to the economic one, because when heads of states read these, they're not focusing majorly on health. They care about the economy and the trade of the nation. So that was the very last project that I had a chance to work on, and that one was really, really interesting for me. Just an overall timeline. I'm not going to go into the detailed specifics of it because there's a lot, but just to kind of show that we were working on these projects concurrently and together throughout the whole time. Whenever there was a dip, so if I needed to send off the terms of reference and I was sitting on feedback, I would work on another project to make up for that time. So there was always something that I had to do while I was there, but it never felt like it never felt like I wasn't supported. I was constantly supported throughout this entire process. There was a great group of people helping me with it, and my supervisor, and I'm so thankful to all of them. The lessons that I had a chance to learn when I was there, number one, that everything's a collaborative effort. It was great to see all the different people coming through because, there were times where we had to have meetings at 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning, and for all of these people to come and sit through those meetings because, they were flying off to different countries at different points, and this was the only time we could meet. That was amazing. For everyone to bring their expertise, once I created the work plan, I had to send it off to a monitoring and evaluation team to see if that makes sense to them. I had to go send it off to all the networks to see if that makes sense to them. So that collaboration was very important in being able to create a solid piece of work at the end of the day for CARPHA to use it to the maximum that it can. The second one was to shift perspectives. So again, I already mentioned the CSME project. We had to shift our perspective from a health one to an economic one, so catering it based on the people that we're talking to. Being resilient, because there was a lot of changes that came throughout this entire process. So to be flexible with it, but also to stick with your goal and not to sacrifice the goals that you have. And the last one was to ask questions, because I went in there not knowing a lot about the Caribbean region, not knowing a lot about CARPHA, not knowing anything about how they operate. And it took a while to learn about the process, but they were so very helpful with doing that. Everyone was able to send me documents to learn more about them. They all sat down with me to have a conversation. So ask as many questions as you can. And well, while I was there, it wasn't all just work. There was a lot of fun as well. So I got a chance to go to Tobago while I was there. They're sister islands. You have to take a 15-minute flight into Tobago. It was the best flight I've ever been on, because as soon as you take off, you're ready to land. And it was amazing. So definitely check out Tobago. So I got a chance to go to a waterfall, and it was one of those waterfalls where you like keep climbing a bunch of stairs. But there's not really stairs. It's like a rope, and you just climb using the rope. So it was really fun to not die. It was a great experience because you could slip and fall. I actually came back with a lot of bruises trying to climb Argyle Falls. Pigeon Point is the most picturesque place you could be in the Caribbean region. It's just beautiful, that sunset. Fort George, because there's a lot of mountains in Trinidad, so you can actually sit at the very top and look down at the entire city. Right now, all you can see is me, but there is a city under it, I swear, in that picture. And then Maracas Beach, which is where you should go to get bacon shark. It is the best sandwich I've ever had in my entire life. So a lot of great food and traveling was also a theme throughout my time in Tobago and Trinidad. And I had a chance to meet a lot of fun people while I was there. There were people who were there from CARPHA, young people there. So the one in the middle is actually from the States, so we were working together, and that was a great project. And then randomly met people during the travel time, because when you're there, meet fun people. And so thankful to the team at CARPHA. On the right is actually my supervisor, Cheryl. She was so thankful. I'm so thankful to her mentorship and everything that she's done for me while I was there. And the lab team, who actually adopted myself and Gareth, who was the other person who came to Trinidad. They brought us food almost every other morning. They gave us pizza. They took us out for lunch. And they're just amazing people. And I've never really understood like warmth. Like Canadians are really nice, but the Trinidadian people are just warm and very open, and that was something that's that was very interesting to me. And a big shout out to the Queen Elizabeth Scholars, but also to James, because if it wasn't for James, I would have nowhere to live while I was in Trinidad. But also to the HR team, Beverly and Vinta at CARPHA, because we got stopped at immigration and customs. They would not let us through. So huge shout out to them for calling international affairs and for calling immigrations and getting us through the country and then organizing us to go back and get our visas extended. So huge shout out to the HR team also at CARPHA, but then CARPHA itself for hosting me, and then the McMaster Health Forum for giving me such a great opportunity to go and experience the healthcare system in a different country. I actually did really experience the healthcare system because I actually went to the hospital once for my neck. So it was great. And thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us today for our latest Queen Elizabeth Scholarship webinar. There's some links on the screen there. I'm going to ask that you take a look at those when you have the time. That first link, if you have any interest in our new Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Program, please visit that link. It has all of the information about the program and how to apply. The second link is a link to all of our presentations when they come up. So as our scholars come back from abroad, they do a webinar just like this one, and we list them all there when the time comes. And then the third link that's on the screen is to our blog page. So our scholars write blog posts, and we post them there to give you a little bit more personal experiences about what they did while they were abroad. So you can look forward to reading a little bit more about their experiences on that website. And otherwise, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from having all of you tune in again in the future.